Boom. And there we are. What is happening, everybody? It is December 20th, 2025. My most likely, it very well might be my last. No, I can't say that. I was going to say it might be my last Curmudgeon's Corner of 2025, but I'm not doing. I'm going to do another one. There's been a slight scheduling conflict with the chairman of the Pay It Forward campaign, Ryan. And so I'm not exactly sure when we're going to do the award ceremony for the Pay It Forward campaign. We were talking, all the judges, we were talking, and it might be something like the NFL, where the 2025 season is over, but we do the Super Bowl in the following year, 2026. So it's gotten so big. You guys have done such an amazing job of supplying the Pay It Forward campaign. I have so much stuff. I think, Monday I'll probably do a live video on Instagram just to show you guys how much stuff you guys have submitted. And I mean, even as late as today, well, this, I guess today, maybe yesterday. It might have been yesterday. I don't know. I do a lot of apple juice. 'Tis the season for apple juice. But anyway, we had a DIY polisher donated, but it needs a battery and a charger. And the Pay It Forward campaign is designed to help people and not add expenses. And so I reached out to Ivan over at DIY Detailing, and I said, "Hey, man, I got this polisher that was donated, but in order for me to give it away, I kind of need a charger and a battery." And he was like, "No problem. Do you need anything else?" And I'm like, "I don't think so. We're a little light on pads, but I mean, that's minuscule compared to all the other stuff that's been donated." Um, so I would say that between you guys donating money to shipping, and you guys donating, we broke it down into three categories: equipment, shop supplies, and chemicals. We have so much stuff. You guys have just, you guys have filled the pantries. It is truly humbling to see how this community has come together. This thing is live. This thing live. Jamie, you guys came through gangbusters. The Edgeless 360. I think there was 10 packs of those. There was 5 packs of the Boss wash pads. Just absolutely incredible. Anyway, so I want to get to our guest as quickly as possible. This guy. I mean, I've never met anybody like him. I know I say every show that this is going to be a fantastic show. I know I say every show that, I've waited all year to talk to this person. I got to have dinner with this cat a couple of weeks ago, and you guys have never met anyone like this guy. This is a box of tissues. I'm going to play it mental floss. Mental floss. I doom scroll. I usually wake up around 5 a.m. in the morning, and I doom scroll because of bathroom needs for the rest of the household. I usually just let everybody do their thing, and so at 5 a.m. I'm just doom scrolling. And if you're one of my closer friends, you usually will get spammed by Instagram doom scrolling. But it's also part where I actually find a lot of these clips for the mental floss. I had something else initially planned for tonight's mental floss, but then at the last minute here, about I don't know, 20 minutes ago, I found this one, and it is 100% what the Pay It Forward campaign is all about, and so therefore I have to play it. But I've watched it 6 times, and it has made me cry every time. So be prepared, boys and girls, that this mental floss, I wish that I could end Curmudgeon's Corner 2025 on like a super happy, inspirational video, but this one is going to be it's a tearjerker. So let's get this started so that we can get our guest out. Branden is just absolutely amazing, and he's a rock star, and we got to get him out of here. But let's do the mental floss first, and then all right, here we go.
Okay. Daddy is the sweetest daddy in the world. Daddy is the most handsome, the smartest, the most clever, the kindest. He is my Superman. Daddy wants me to do well at school. Daddy is just great, but he lies. He lies about having a job. He lies about having money. He lies that he's not tired. He lies that he's not hungry. He lies that we have everything. He lies about his happiness. He lies because of me.
That is the Pay It Forward campaign. That is everything that you guys do. The lives that we've touched, the people that we've helped, and when things are the darkest, this community rallies. So I had to play it because of everything that you guys do for this community. Okay. All right. I got it out of my system. I do it number 7 and I'm still all emotional. It's bananas. Anyway. That was about all the fathers, about all the mothers, all the providers, about the people who carry the weight so others don't have to feel it. That is what we do. Okay. All right. Tonight's guest reminds us why that weight should never start so early and why helping people before they even realize they're broken matters so much. I can't say enough about this guy. I don't even know if I should say enough about this guy. I think I should just bring him on and let him do all the talking for himself. So, without further ado, let's bring on Branden. Boom. Branden, welcome to the show.
Aaron, thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it. First of all, your video, your mental floss was touching for sure, man. That's 100% why we're all doing what we do, right? I mean, it's about individual people figuring it out, what someone needs, and being selfless enough to help them get that. So I appreciated that. That was awesome, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I had a feeling that I love the fact that you are here. My last show before the award ceremony of the Pay It Forward campaign, because you are the epitome of what this whole thing is about. It's fascinating. You and I got to have dinner a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, the words "impressed" are so underserving of who you are as a young man. Like, this is you are a phenomenal human being. So that being said, here on the Curmudgeon's Corner, the new guest, we'd love to hear the Batman origin story. So if you wouldn't mind going back to age 2 for me, I would appreciate if you could tell our viewing population your story.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so it's hard to say, make a long story short, right? Because it's a whole lifetime that brought us to where we're at the moment. And I will say that before I was born, my family discovered that we have a heart condition that runs in the family. Is congenital. And my mom unfortunately lost her sister at the age of 26 due to our heart condition. And so when I
Wow.
was born, maybe 4 or 5 years later, I was tested in the womb and found that I also had this condition. And at the time, it was pretty rare. There wasn't a lot of information about it. It's called prolonged QT syndrome, and it is an arrhythmia. So essentially, your heart beats out of rhythm, and under certain circumstances, you can experience cardiac arrest. And unfortunately, at certain times, it can be a sudden arrhythmia death syndrome. And so when I was born, I had actually suffered cardiac arrest multiple times before the age of 2,
Wow.
and we had what was considered an experimental surgery done in 2002, which was one of the first in the world of its kind at Children's Hospital Philadelphia, where I had a defibrillator pacemaker implanted. And so I've had 5 more heart surgeries since then. I'm 25 years old now, and we've just come a really long way, So it's been a ride. From that experience, I began speaking as a national spokesperson for the American Heart Association when I was 8 years old. I was going in for like my 4th heart surgery or so, but I'm sorry if you wanted to cut in. It's a lot of information. So
No, I just want, like, you were a spokesperson for American Heart, like at age 8. What were you
yeah.
speaking on? Like, what is like they're presenting you to what degree?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's a program in public schools called Jump Rope for Heart. And Jump Rope for Heart is a really cool program. All praise to the American Heart Association. And basically, they go into public schools and they do a jump rope event. And the more you jump rope, the more money is donated to research for people with heart conditions, things like that nature. So when I was in elementary school, my school participated in this program, and the American Heart Association approached the school and asked if anyone had a heart condition that could be kind of the spokesperson for our school's fundraiser. And they approached me and my mom, and of course, my mom signed me up essentially. And I was nervous, I wasn't anything special in my mind at 8 years old, but they asked me to speak in front of the school and just kind of tell my story, explain why this money might benefit somebody with a heart condition. And so on film, the news was there. Fox News, NBC News was just there. And this is a funny story because the principal of my school came knocking on our classroom door around the end of the day, right before we were supposed to have this assembly, this event. And then someone had called the local news, and they came and they were in the auditorium waiting for me. And when I came down to the auditorium and I saw the cameras, I was like, I wanted nothing to do with any of it. I didn't want the spotlight or anything like that. But my grandmother at the time was there, who has since passed away. She's a huge, huge influence in my life. She was a public speaker actually before she passed away and represented people for the SADS Foundation. And so, anyway, she told me to tell my story and be honest about it, and that's what I did. And then it kind of caught on. And then I spoke at 200 more public schools until the time I was 18 years old. And ever since then, I've started our foundation, which is the iRise University Initiative.
Okay. Well, at age at age 8, um, what do you remember about learning so early that life isn't guaranteed? Did that have like was that at age 8, or do you have that ability to have that kind of self-awareness?
So, my first memory of my whole life, actually, I always think about this. My very first memory, I was actually in the car in the back seat on the way to preschool. And I know it's a memory because no one else could have recalled this story to me. And I've always remembered having a thought that I had already had multiple heart surgeries by the time I formed my first memory, right? And so the first thing I thought was, I must be different from other people. And that was the first thing I remember thinking. And it makes me upset in a sense, but it also makes me happy because it's a realization that you're going to be on your own path for the rest of your life, right? Nobody can realistically show me um, one way or another because there haven't been too many people in my position. Just with the awareness of what I was experiencing, it was a good thing and a bad thing. So at age 8, I had actually seen friends of mine who I was in the hospital with at a young age die from cancer.
Hmm.
And I was a Make-A-Wish recipient, and so there was a thought that I may not, live to see maturity. And so it was interesting,
What
man. I mean, I think
what was your wish?
my wish was to be captain of the ship with Mickey Mouse. I was a big Disney guy,
All
and so
right.
they put us on a Disney cruise, which was really cool. My whole family.
That's pretty wild. Wow.
Yeah, great organization.
For sure. Sorry to interrupt. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just had to know.
No, no worries. No, I appreciate it. It was a great experience. I will cherish those memories. But Make a Wish, great organization. Again, glory to them. But yeah. So I think I in my first ever speaking engagement at 8 years old is on film. I have the video, and this should tell you where my mind was at that age. So it's a running joke, like an inside joke with my friends and family who were there, because I said, I'm going in for my surgery, and there's 700 people here. And I said, I'm going in for my surgery. And whether you have a heart condition or you have cancer or you're having a stroke or a heart attack. And I was saying these crazy, like extreme ailments that people might experience because that's where my life was. That was what was normal for me. It was instead of relating to someone and saying, whether you have a test coming up, right, and you have to persevere, or whether or not you're trying to get a good grade in class, it was about life and death situations. And I think that I actually prefer to spend my time there nowadays because it feels more real and authentic when you have an interaction with somebody who's been in that position before. Things matter and things don't, right? At the end of the day, some things matter more than others in life. And I think we do forget what matters a lot of the time, and I think that's a big part of the message we're trying to share with iRise.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I definitely we're going to get into iRise in a deep way here in a minute. How do you think that shaped the way that you saw responsibility and then, like by age 8, did you kind of like I can't imagine, dude. Like basically like your sense of purpose. We talk a lot on the show about find your why. What is your purpose? Why, you know what I mean? And when you find your why, it's a lot easier for you to stay focused on the mission. Um, at age 8, going through all of those things, all these surgeries, and I mean, you have to. I mean, there has to be a certain level of self-awareness that when you hit Make-A-Wish Foundation status, the future is completely uncertain. So how does an 8-year-old turn that into purpose?
I wonder if the answer I'm about to give would be relatable at all. And I don't know that it is, but I think that, and this, I understand how strange this sounds. So we lost a 6 month old. My cousin passed away from my condition when I was maybe 12 years old. So we had a 6 month old pass away in his sleep. And so one of the things that's always been on my mind throughout childhood is death, right? And I think it's interesting because, I mean, it is a heavy topic, right? We're 20 minutes in, but we're going to discuss death. Let's talk about it. I think that's something that changed me for sure. And I think that thinking about death at a young age, because it was talked about, right? I had lost friends at a young age from illnesses. I lost family members from illnesses, and I think I never feared death, and that's the thing that's been strange in my life. And I say that in a sense, not as a uh, not as I'm not bragging about not being afraid or being fearless. It has nothing to do with that. I'm certainly afraid of a lot of things, but I never feared death because I thought for sure that something better came afterward. And I'm not a very religious person or faithful person necessarily, but I just have a feeling that in one way or another, I'll be at peace. And that was from childhood. It just didn't bother me. And so my thought was the worst thing that could happen is that I die. And if that were to happen, I think that that would be an acceptable outcome. Not a sad way, not a pessimistic way, but in a sense that it kind of allowed me to appreciate life, if that makes sense, knowing that I was going to die someday, right? Like I'm going to die eventually. I've known that for a long time, and I think that if I were to die tomorrow, that this interaction that you and I are having, I want to be meaningful, and I think that has driven me in every engagement I've ever given. When talking about my story and about my family, I think that matters a lot, right? And that's what fuels me and what's fueled me since the beginning from a young age. That is the truth. I haven't been able to put it into those words my whole life, but I have always felt deeply that I'd be happiest if I just did my best, right? And did my best to live a happy life and be pleasant and be positive. So hopefully that brings some light to your question.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And then when did helping kids stop becoming an idea and become your mission?
Yeah, again, great question. I appreciate it. And so I spoke pretty consistently from age 8 to 18, and I kind of realized I enjoy public speaking quite a bit. I find that I'm comfortable there. I have a bit of a passion and I have some skill set that helps me execute it at a high level. And so when I was 18 years old in high school as a senior, then there's a whole other caveat to this story as well, is that while I was in high school deciding what to do with my life, I, had another heart surgery while I was a sophomore in high school. I grew up in a single parent household. So my mom worked overnights and I was, home alone all the time, right? I had a lot of other things, pressures going on. And so I was deciding what I wanted to do with my career. Now I was doing well in high school, but with all the things I was dealing with, I developed some pretty bad habits and ways of, dealing with my stress, with being in and out of the hospital, and kind of just not having the resources at home to execute my life at a high level consistently in school, if that makes sense. We didn't have a computer at home, as an example.
Well, if you're comfortable talking about it, like what do you mean by bad habits?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked actually, because it's important to talk about these things. And I talk about these things publicly. So when I work with students, I help share these, this is life, this is real. And so when I was in high school and I began to deal with a lot of, personal problems, my sister at the time actually attempted suicide when I was 17 years old and I was in high school. And so I was the one to find her, brought her to the hospital, that type of experience. I lost my grandmother when I was in high school as well, who was a parent to me, all these things going on. And I developed these habits of smoking weed, drinking alcohol, partying on the weekends, right? Hanging out with a bad crowd. But I was still executing my studies. I was still doing well in school. But the caveat is just that the stress was building up, right? And so I didn't have positive habits to deal with the life that I was living. And
Oh no.
so when I was a senior in high school, I kind of came into like a realization like, wow, I don't have the tools, right? I don't have the proper tools to cope with my life, right? With all the stress that I have that I'm dealing with. And so I started to develop meditation and exercise. And I started to study verbal communication, started to read books and finding skills that made my life more enjoyable, regardless of how hard it was. and it helped me get through a really, tough period of time. And so anyway, I had the opportunity to go to school at Rutgers, New Brunswick. At the time, I wanted to be a doctor or be an anesthesiologist. And I also had an offer in Manhattan to continue speaking in public schools for a living at 18. And so I took that opportunity. I moved to Manhattan. I was living there on my own, and I was working for a company doing speaking in public schools. And that's when I launched iRise, as I just realized, there was a very specific message I needed to bring, and I knew I could do it my way. And that's what happened. I ended up coming home from New York and launching iRise in 2018.
2018. That's wild. All right. So, man, there's a lot that you just delivered that I want to dive into, but I do really want to talk about iRise. I do want to get, but and so like for me, this is kind of like a new world order. Um, Something that you probably don't know, but we do talk about a lot here on the corner, is mental health, mental, and awareness. And the end of the show is very heavy on suicide prevention. I call it the darkness, and the darkness is it's always there, and it always wants to get its fingers on you. 22 veterans a day commit suicide, and we've gone into the numbers about outside of just veterans, how many people commit suicide per day. And that's ultimately where I find my purpose is talking about it, because I find that when we talk about it, uh the darkness isn't so dark. We had a little, when you shine the light on the darkness, it recoils. You mentioned that your sister had an attempt at suicide, and that you found her. Are you comfortable talking about, like, do you know why, and how is she now, and what did she do, or what is she doing? Because for us that suffer from that kind of stuff, it's a daily struggle. So what is she doing to ward off the darkness, I guess?
So I am comfortable talking about my experience, right? And I can always speak to what it is that I've been through and what I've experienced in my life. And so, from my perspective, but first things first, my sister is one of the strongest people I've ever met in my life. She is an incredible individual. I think that the resilience that she's brought to me has been invaluable, right? I would never have been able to be where I am without witnessing what she's been through and watching her, persevere. So, I give her every ounce of credit in the world. So it's just to say that. But my sister, as I explained before, I was in and out of the hospital from a very young age, right? My sister's 3 years older than me. And with that being the case, with only a single parent, as I mentioned, my mom had to spend a ton of time with me. My mom also has my heart condition, and my sister does not share it. And so my mom had similar heart surgeries to mine. She understands, a little bit of what I was dealing with, but she had to spend a lot of energy with me. And so my sister she realistically didn't get the attention she needed in terms of her development and her mental health and her emotional wherewithal and her medical needs, even still. And so my sister has her own struggles medically that had we had more, mental bandwidth, that I'm sure would have been taken care of easier earlier on in life. And so my sister dealt with a lot of bullying as well
Mm.
throughout her years of school. My sister's always been a different kind of person, same as I have. But she just kind of got ridiculed for it a lot, oftentimes, and it was a shame. She was made fun of quite a bit. Now, my sister always had friends. She was always, somebody who was sociable, and you would have a good time around. But at the same time, she also found herself as, the butt of a joke sometimes, and it's a shame.
Sure.
That being said, when I was 17, again, my sister was going through a lot in terms of her life. She had already graduated high school. She had gone to college and had some medical issues that she was dealing with, and that were really hard for her at the time. And she couldn't find a way out, and led her to the decision she made. And that night was a really, really pivotal moment for me in my life. I've told this story before, but I was playing some video games, so I had a headset on, and my sister was having a really just erratic evening, essentially, and she kind of was yelling and asking for my help, and I couldn't hear, apparently. So it's a tough situation for me, as I, struggle with forgiving myself for the situation, but also, having done what I did to help save her life, hopefully. But long story short, my sister took a fistful of pills, right, that she hoped would end her life. And I found her sometime after, maybe within an hour. And found her. She wasn't breathing. She had a very faint pulse, and scooped her up, got her in my car, which I had just gotten my permit for. And I drove her as hard as I could to the hospital. And when they brought my sister to, she was, out of it, definitely out of sorts. And then from
Hmm.
then on, she received some follow-up care. And then ever since then, she's kind of been on a recovery path. That was 8 years ago now. My sister is now since, or 9 years ago now. My sister is now since doing well. She's a professional. She's been in school. She has graduated with certifications as a massage therapist, and she has some really great income going on. She has a great partner who has his PhD in rocket science. Is a great guy. And I
We
think
should have
that
them both on the show.
no, you would love both of them. They are standout people. So yeah, I mean, yeah, tough time, but you
Brandon,
persevere.
can I just say thank you for sharing that?
I
Thank you for
appreciate
sharing
it.
that. It's such a beautiful outcome, and I think a lot of people that watch this show, since I started, we didn't start out Curmudgeon's Corner talking about this kind of stuff, but I'm, like I have the teal and the purple in the background for suicide awareness. Um, and the fact that she went through that, and you saved her, and the fact that she continues to rise from the ashes every single day, it's true. It's a true testimony to the human spirit, and that is something that we need to talk more about all the time. I don't want this show to become that kind of a thing, but it's important to know that, these struggles are real, that whatever she was going through that brought her to that decision, at the time, in her mind, was absolutely 100% real. And that sometimes, I talk about, like, the darkness is one of those things where um it lures you in. It's nice, and it's quiet, and it says, "You don't have to struggle," Like, "Hey, champ, why are you kicking so hard against life? You can just exit out, do over, start over, do it again." And that's when that demon is the most persuasive, is when you're really struggling really hard. And it's just like, "You don't need to struggle so much, champ. Just take a bunch of pills, call it a day. You'll fall asleep, and then it'll be all over. You don't have to worry about bills. You don't have to worry about mortgages and rent. You don't have to worry about anything." It's one of the reasons why I wear this shirt. It's my Be Kind shirt, and on the back of it, it reads, "Every single person that you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about." And I'm trying really hard, Lord, trying hard to use that lens to every person that I encounter. Somebody who's being rude, somebody who's being mean, somebody who cuts me off in traffic, pulls out in front of you. I'm just thinking, you know what? Maybe their brain is on a problem, a fight, a battle that I know nothing about, and they really weren't even thinking about cutting me off. They just, like, I'm so distraught. My wife is cheating on me. I'm trying to learn grace. I'm trying to learn grace. Anyway, I enjoy hearing about detailing on Curmudgeon's Corner, but I love hearing about these non-dealing topics too. It's why I watch as much as I can. AA. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. I do. All right. Anyway, Brandon, I'm sorry to interrupt you like that. I
No, no
should not
worries.
have done that. So,
No, no.
so then let's jump into iRise. I mean, that is really, at this point, at the young age of 25, so far, that is your legacy. Can you tell the audience what iRise is? I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it again. And I think this is a topic that when I decided what I wanted to do with my life, I knew that it would be something that I could spend my whole life talking about, and just relax and enjoy. And so this initiative came from this whole idea of ensuring equal opportunity for every young person. We want to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed, an equal opportunity to be heard, an equal opportunity to accumulate the wealth and resources that they want in their life, whether that be material wealth or relationships, things of that nature. Whatever it may be for the people who are coming up in society right now, we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to have those things fairly. And so the way that we do that is ultimately two ways. One is helping students develop skills that are realistically free, and these skills and habits are things that will put them on the path to succeed. They're skills that are backed by Ivy League research, which we have available on the website. But we bring this to public schools. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so all of the money we make from events as fundraisers goes towards underprivileged students. We give out scholarships. We donate at-home study spaces to young kids. So a lot of kids don't have a computer or a desk or paper, pencil, sharpeners at home, a place to do their homework and study. So we actually will find a student. We'll ask them what they like, what their aesthetic is, what they want something to look like, to have their own personal space. And then we'll build them a desk, and we'll get them a PC, and we'll get them a printer, and we'll get them a chair. We'll get them everything they need, all the resources and school supplies, so that they have their space at home. And that's something that I'm really proud of. I really love that program. And so that's what we've been doing recently. Right now in 2026, we have our goal of sponsoring 20 schools. And we have started a fundraiser for $100,000 is our goal to hit for 2026, the service, from the end of the 2025-2026 school year, and then including the beginning of the 2026-2027 school year. So we want to sponsor 20 good schools, and 20 students as well, and get them either scholarships or at-home study spaces.
No, I like this is I don't mean how do I phrase this? How do you pick which 20, like, I mean, there seems like there's so many kids in need. Like, how do you just pick 20?
It's hard, man, and that's the hardest part right now. And this is I will get emotional talking about this, but man, Aaron, for every story that I hear of a student that I can imagine being, if that makes sense.
Mm.
I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but when I hear a story of a student, I can imagine their experience, right? Like I get what they're going through, because I may have experienced something similar, right? Or maybe I have a similar emotional experience. But for all those stories that I hear, I can only help right now. I mean, 1 in 1,000, and so there's unlimited students that need the help. And so what we do is we take all the nominations of schools and students, and we get a combination of teachers, administrators, parents, and PTA, PTO people. And oftentimes, I'll tell you this, Aaron, oftentimes there's a family or a student in a community that kind of everybody unanimously goes, we need to get together for this person, right? And I think you've
Mm.
experienced similar stories you've talked about, right? You might experience somebody who just went through something tragic. My home's burned down, and everybody in the community knows it, and they're trying to help out and do what they can and come together. Those people need a slap on the back. Those people are going to need all the help they can get, right? And
Yeah.
even with all the material help, to know that somebody's out there looking out for you, um, is huge. And I want to live in a world where everybody has somebody looking out for them and they know it, and I think that's what we're trying to accomplish. And again, I mean, I could share with you limitless stories of students I've come across that, they, without us intervening, there's no help for them in terms of resources.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's again, that's why our Pay It Forward campaign exists. We have 8 people on the board that review the entries and stuff like that. Um, and I yeah, it is hard. It is hard um, to hear some of the people that like some of the stuff that they're going through. But I understand exactly what you say when there's one person or there's one nomination that stands out um more than somebody else, and we get some really fantastic nominations. But we have, like I said, and when I started the show tonight, we have so many donations that we need more nominations. Like, we have the ability to help people. We were able to help 15 families last year. um and 2 years ago, we actually had a father uh email me and tell me, like, hey, you saved my son's life. You were able to give him back his business, and you restored his dignity and his ability to provide for his family. And he goes, I am 100% certain that you saved his life. So um you said you're 25. You started this program when you were 18. So we're looking at about a good almost 8 years worth of data. Have you been able to see the difference that the iRise program has made?
Yeah, that's been the most rewarding part. I think it's been really, really fantastic to get to see some of the changes. And so in 2019, so 2018, I started the initiative, and then partner of mine, his name is Frankie Treminio, great guy. Grew up in the city of Camden. For those of you guys who know Camden City, New Jersey, and great city, with a great population, but they struggle a lot socioeconomically. And so in 2019, we decided, I mean, what better than the city he grew up in, and bring this to those students. And so we were fortunate enough to work with them in the 2019-2020 school year. But of course, as everyone knows, that school year was the year that COVID shut down the schools. And so we did some events with them, and I can give a couple stories. I'll tell one just to tell you the impact. And so one of the schools that we work with is called Pride Academy. And so Pride Academy is a secondary school to the secondary schools in Camden. So a lot of these students have a juvenile record. A lot of these students have been in and out of juvenile detention facilities. And a lot of them just need a second chance, third chance, fourth chance before this ultimately is their final shot to stay in the education system. And so you have students 13 to 20 years old, really, in the same school, trying to make it out, right? And so we go to do an event with them, and we ask them prior, hey, we're going to talk about mental health, essentially mental health, positive habits, right? And things that they can take control over in their own lives. And so the administration let us know that there was a pair of boys there that couldn't be in the same room together. So we'd have to do separate events. And we said, well, why not? They live on different blocks, and they were gang affiliated. They were two people who were in different gangs in different neighborhoods, which is insane to say. I mean, but it is the reality. They go to the same school. They live one street away from one another, but they hated each other. They couldn't be in the same room together. They would fight. And so we said, look, just bring them in the same room together, whatever, we'll deal with them, it'll be all right, and because if we can't intervene here, then we can't intervene ever. So let's see what we can do. And so had them together, the whole class is together, probably 70 students or so. And we're just going through different habits. We're having people share stories, and talking about positive habits for our mental health and alternatives to violence, alternatives to getting ourselves in trouble and ruining our lives. We don't want to go down that path. We want to be happy. We want to prosper. And these two guys shared stories about, after having plenty of people share different personal stories, these two tough guys shared their personal scars, essentially, and talked about how the gang violence had affected their families. And it was one of the most powerful experiences that I've ever had in my entire life. And they both cried and they both hugged, and they were both friends when it was all over, which is I mean, sounds like it's made up, frankly. It sounds absurd, and the reality is that it was communication, it was patience, it was understanding, empathy, and more than anything, as cliche and as nonsensical as it sounds to people, it was love. It was love. We gave the love to say, look, I'm a grown man. I'm a grown man with an ego, with masculine traits, and I want to be known as a tough guy just like anybody else. But it's more important for me to be happy and not worry about what anyone else thinks. And if we can both do that, then we both become friends and we understand that there's something so much richer in our lives than disagreement, just friction. And that's one experience, but we have countless stories like that, which is
Brandon,
incredible. I'm really proud of it.
that's such a beautiful story.
Thank you.
It's such a beautiful story. Wow. And that was you said that it was year one?
That was year one.
That dude, that's got to rocket launch you. I Wow. When we helped that one guy, again, when his father called and said that we saved his life, I turned to the team and I was just like, if Phoenix E.O.D closes its doors tomorrow, mission accomplished.
Yep.
I That's a great story. That's a fantastic story. Why do you think habit matters more than motivation? Or are they intertwined, or are they the same thing? What is you mentioned habits a couple of times. And what
Yeah,
is,
it's
excuse me, and what is that habit? Like, what is the habit that you need to practice? Like, what is, I need a habit. I need to figure out, a habit to keep the darkness at bay.
Yeah, well, one thing you mentioned motivation, and I think that's one of the places, the arenas where we do talk about it, we discuss it, and we talk about intrinsic motivation, but that is what I believe to be someone's personal journey. I think that that is something that, so as a great example, the Buddha talks about how you can't fully find enlightenment by following him because he didn't follow anyone to find enlightenment himself. And so it's hard for me to teach someone to find their end game, to find their why, to find their, motivation.
Mhm.
It's something of their own way. However, I can put them on a path. I can put them through daily experiences that will help them find that place. And it's so powerful because it's free for everyone and it's accessible. And there's a lot of research and information to support that these things work. And those habits, number one, most importantly, in my opinion, above all else, is setting goals. You have to set a goal. And I know how silly it sounds and cliche once again, but I would challenge anyone listening. When was the last time did you write down your measurable goal, right? And when it needs to be completed by, or when you'd like it to be completed by, right? And held yourself accountable to that goal. And the reason why that's the most important is because we have something to aim at, and so it just tells you about what you want, what you desire, who you are. It teaches you about yourself. If you have to decide one thing to go for, you're going to have to eliminate a whole bunch of other things. And that's going to teach you about sacrifice. And somebody said to me one time that the only thing we can choose in life is our regrets. And I really loved that sentiment. And what that means is that no matter what you choose to do, you're going to regret the choice you didn't make. It is what it is. You can't do everything, right? It's not like there's always a perfect choice and a terrible choice. Sometimes there's a good choice and then there's another good choice, and it's like you can only have one. So you got to make a decision, and you're going to
I,
regret the one you didn't pick.
I literally have this taped to my computer. The only message that I have taped to my computer, and it reads, "When in doubt as to what to do, ask yourself what you'd wish tomorrow that you had done."
Oh my goodness, that's exactly it, man. That's exactly. Wow.
Wow. Wow. Brandon. Wow. 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 I had I'm asking you if you can relate to this. Either you are the mentor or you are the mentee. I had a professor in college. He wasn't even my professor. He was a professor at the college that I went to. And he could tell from a distance that I was a pretty lost soul. And um, you know, and he walked up to me one day in the cafeteria and was just like, "Hey, man, I think that you and I can probably relate on a lot of different levels. So if you ever want to stop by, my office is always open." He was an economics professor, and I was studying English. I was an my first go around. I was an English major, and then one day I was bebopping through his hall, and his door was open, and I stopped in, and he became, well, to this day, he's always been a surrogate father to me. And when I was going through some of my darkest times, um, he just always believed in me, and he always, you know, you're worthy of being loved. And like I had some issues. I had some tough growing up. My father was a colonel in the Marine Corps, and yeah, anyway, and he would just have all of this positive reinforcement all the time. And you know, he ended up being a groomsman in my wedding. To this day, he's still one of my dearest, bestest friends, and he always believed in me, and he never gave up on me. Um, have you, you know, at the early age of 25, have you had the ability to have that impact on on the youth? I would imagine that you encounter, especially working in Camden, there's a lot of broken homes, and there's probably a lot of kids out there that haven't had anyone believe in them. Have you had that joy of experiencing that kind of impact into a young person's life?
Yeah, I definitely, again, that kind of goes hand in hand with the last anecdote I was sharing, and I think that that being rewarding, and additionally, I have another experience that during COVID, of course, everybody had to learn online, and a lot of people in Camden just didn't have laptops at the time, and so the city had to provide them laptops in order for them to be able to attend school, and so we started doing sessions over Zoom with the kids, and nobody would show up, right? Of course, obviously. And so we would give incentives. We would do giveaways for the kids to show up to their sessions during school. And so we started to get more and more students to show up. And we would talk about different habits that hopefully they would be practicing at home during this period of time because it was super stressful. And one of the things I spoke to one student in particular, and I said, "What do you want to be when you get older?" And he said, "I want to be a professional drug dealer." That's exactly what he said to me. In fact,
Wow.
actually, he said it in a more a less polished, less professional way, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Um, yeah, he shared it with a little bit more English on it, if you will. So, and the teacher in the session, who was in the Zoom session at the same time, scolded him and said, "Don't say that. You can't say that." And I said, "Just let him share his thought." Right. And I think I might have shared this with you privately. And I said, "Just let him share his thought." And I said, "Well, why do you want to do that?" And he said, "Well, they make a lot of money. They don't have to work in an office, wear a suit, blah, 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 blah." And I said, "Oh, okay, cool." I said, "All right, interesting." I said, "Well," and he said, "Well, a couple rappers that I like to listen to, they do that job and they sounds like they have a lot of fun." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, who do you like to listen to?" And he said, "Oh, this guy." And I said, "Oh, I like that guy too. He's in jail. That guy's currently in jail." And he was like, "Oh, is he?" I said, "Yeah, it's crazy. He's just in jail right now." And then he said, "Oh, well, I like this guy too." I said, "Yeah, didn't he die last year?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, well, I mean, I guess maybe there's a pattern here going." He goes, "Yeah, I guess." I said, "Here's what I want you to do." I said, "I just want you to later on today turn a fan on and listen as hard as you can to the fan for 15 seconds. That's all I want you to do, nothing else." He said, "All right, I think I could do that." I said, "Okay, cool." And then the next week I saw him and I said, "Did you do what I asked you?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What happened?" He said, "Nothing." I said, "Okay, cool. Do it again, but do it for 30 seconds this time." And so on and so forth. And this went on for 3 months until he was doing it for 10 minutes at a time. And he came to me the one day and he said, I'll never forget this. This made me laugh, actually. He said, He said, "Oh man, I've been doing those meditations you told me about." And I said, "I never told you about any meditations." I said, "I told you just to listen to the fan." I said, "You're calling a meditation." So he must have looked into it. He must have learned something about it on his own. But he said, "But I was doing one yesterday and I realized that what I really want to do is make music." And I said, "Awesome." I said, "That makes me happy. I'm glad to hear that." I said, "That's a lot better than the first thing you told me." Right. But that's the process. This is exactly what we're looking for. And that person has since graduated. He has a job that pays him and he helps engineer music. You know what I mean? So super cool.
So that basically is, what happens when belief finally clicks into a kid.
Yes.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's why, dude, like, again, you've impacted a life for forever.
I hope so. I hope we've done this, on quite a few occasions, but it makes me happy, right? And I think that's the thing, man. I mean, what are we doing now to do that on a larger scale? Because it works. We have a system that works, and we all in our team get to have these experiences every day, and we get to come and see this happen in front of our eyes every day. And this is my life now, which is rewarding. But I want to share this with as many people as possible. And one of the best ways that we share this with people is people will donate to us and we'll say, what project, what do you want this to be? You know what I mean? How can we help these kids and help us put this together and make it work? And I think that's what we're looking for at the end of the day. We just want to be able to do this on a larger scale. I have aspirations to go well beyond even America. We want to go help students overseas. And so that's a whole other discussion, but yeah.
Yeah. So why, how did you get the name university? Is, like you call it iRise University. What exactly is that?
So originally, when I was 18 and I started iRise, iRise is an acronym, as it turns out. And so it was, I think it ended up being like IR, maybe like OSE. And so I tweaked the one word so that it would end up being iRise. But the acronym is a process in which we can accomplish our goals essentially. And that was it for a long time. It was just iRise. And then in 2024, we officially became a 501c3 nonprofit, and we just alternated into iRise University because we want to have a full curriculum. We kind of emerged a little bit more, which is awesome. So we were an LLC before, which just donated a ton of money to charity. But now we can just do the charity ourselves.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry about the banner thing. It had this
Okay.
weird turn off in 10 seconds thing that I finally just figured out. There was a big update to StreamYard, and it has taken about 4 episodes for me to figure out everything. I apologize.
No worries.
No one's ever going to accuse me of being a professional. Don't worry. All right. You mentioned a team. So right now, how big are you? And you said you wanted to go global. How far are you as far as national is concerned?
Yeah, again, great question. So we have a good relationship with the New Jersey schools to start with, and we're hoping to get to a place where we have some Department of Education contracts here. As of now, we deal directly with Board of Education, PTA, PTO organizations, and so we are. The idea is just any school that could use the product and service that we're offering, we want to be able to bring it to them. And that's the goal. It doesn't mean that we have to have, 1,000,001 places that we're doing this in, but we just want to, if somebody finds this useful for their students, and I imagine this is the case, most schools, if they find it useful for their students and they want to bring something like this to them, that we are accessible. And so as time goes on and as the need grows, we are trying to just make it scalable. So what we can do now is we just get our equipment together. Our equipment's tight enough that we can get it in a personal vehicle, and we're realistically available anywhere at the end of the day. We can fly with our equipment. We can do so in the Midwest, out in the West Coast. So we've already done this all around the East Coast, down in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, DC, Maine, Massachusetts, New York. So
How do, and then one, how do you pitch it? And then two, well, I should say one is how do you get yourself in front of, a school board or whatever? And then two, how do you pitch it?
yeah, another great set of questions. So school boards and Department of Education, it's actually really hard to deal with. They're very strict. So you have to have the highest level of credentials and you need to be credible. And so we do have that, right? So again, I started in public schools when I was 8. That was, I mean, what was that, 17, 18 years ago. So they have a good reputation with a lot of school districts, which is nice, and so a lot of those people know me personally. We do FBI background checks on every single person that works with us, just to ensure that there's visibility. But for the most part, it's realistically about relationships. It's hard to come as an outsider into a school district, right? 99% of the time, we go to a school and the kids tell their parents, and their parents might work at another school district. And they go to their school district and say, "Hey, my kid got to experience this at their school. Can we bring it to ours?" And so on and so forth. And word of mouth is the name of the game in education, visibility, just credibility, being around. And we have great ties to the community. So that's the goal. It's a slow burn, but there's a lot of schools, there's a
Oh,
lot
sure.
of schools, so we're always just working on the next set of schools and we're scaling as we do so. As of right now, I have a team, probably about of a dozen paid employees. So, they have to get paid, they get taken care of to do the job that they do, and they do an excellent job. And then we have quite a few volunteers as well.
Would you say that this has the potential of becoming something? And again, I'm not trying to be political here. I'm not doing that at all. But like, kind of like a Turning Point USA, where like there's like these little branches all across the world, where we're basically, if somebody did want to volunteer, and I'm just gonna pick a random name out of a hat, like Titan Tim down in South Carolina. Clearly, you, Brandon, don't have the ability to service South Carolina on a regular basis. But if, Titan Tim wanted to join the cause, is that something that is doable? Is that like, how does one become a team member of iRise University? And does it have to be centralized here in New Jersey?
No, not at all. And I think it's again a great question. I think we're looking for some level of organizational credibility when we're working with the community, if that makes sense, right? So, as an example, if the police department in your community would want to do an event with us, we would love to do that, right? We do events with, something like dance school, right? There's a lot of, that's as an example. We might go to a baseball team, or a baseball club, right? Any of those things that are organizations in the community, a church, right? We're happy to work with those people. And we want to do that because, again, it helps us create visibility and ties to the community. What we're trying to accomplish is the highest level of professionalism, the highest level of world-class service for these schools and for these students. And it doesn't have to be the formal education system that we're working within, but we definitely want to have that relationship with an organization in the community that's already respected, that brings to serve their community. That's what we're trying to do. So I hope that we're maintaining that level of professionalism anytime that we're in the community. So to answer your question, if somebody in South Carolina wants to get involved, I recommend going to an organization in your community, go to the school board, go to the mayor, go to anybody that you know in your town that could get in touch, that represents an organization, the library, right? Go to your local library. They're always helpful. And they'll get in touch with us and we'll find a way to bring it to your community. That's kind of what we're looking to do right now. As of this moment, we've been really focused and making our area denser. Working with the density of schools here and becoming a staple in our community here. So that's what we've been focused on right now. But in 2026, expansion is the name of the game for sure.
Fantastic. It's wild. I probably you probably glanced over this or went over it already, and I wasn't paying attention because my brain something sparkly and I'm over there. The transition from the heart defect and all the multiple surgeries and speaking on behalf of the AHA, what was that transition from that subject to helping children become better versions of themselves? Where did that transition happen?
Again, great question. I think that when I was speaking for the American Heart Association and sharing my story to help raise money for the American Heart Association, it kind of struck me that I was loving what I was doing in speaking. I found my passion, but there was a message that I wanted to give that this wasn't exactly the forum for. If that makes sense.
Sure.
There was a long period of time where my biggest struggles in life weren't medical, and were economic, right? Or were, just in general poverty, right? Like I was just dealing with being in poverty. And I thought that I would like to speak about that as well,
Hmm.
because it was having an impact on my development. And I knew that if it was having an impact on my development, that it was certainly having an impact on a lot of other people's developments, right? And I wanted to give them options. And so again, I can't just tell a middle schooler who doesn't have a computer at home to go buy a computer, right? Obviously, go get a job or go to the library. I can't even suggest that, right? Because they might not have the transportation to get there. But I can suggest to them, hey, look, listen, what I recommend that you do is use your words, communicate with your teacher, explain to them the situation you're in, have them help you, go home, make sure you spend a little bit of time outside running around to clear your mind, right? You have to do those things. Then additionally, I recommend stop and listen, put a fan on, listen for 30 seconds a minute every day. And it's going to help you clear your mind of this nonsense, right? This way you don't fall into becoming 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, smoking, drinking, partying, because you don't have those coping mechanisms.
I know that we did touch on this earlier, but I do want to circle back around to it. So I was in EMS for in New Jersey. In New Jersey, I was in EMS from like 98 to 16. Um, and primarily, not primarily, yeah, primarily, Camden County. I was second lieutenant over in Barrington EMS. Um, so we dealt with Camden a lot. Maybe not like responding to emergencies in Camden, but going to Cooper Trauma is like the only level 1 trauma center here in South Jersey. Well, maybe Atlantic City has one, but it was Cooper is the closest level 1 trauma center. And we have Our Lady of Lourdes, and for a long time we had Virtua Camden. At night, we wouldn't even stop at traffic lights. That is no bueno. You just don't stop. Camden is a very scary place. Um, Camden City, I mean, and it might have changed now, in the last 10 years. I don't know. I know that Campbell Soup has invested a lot in Camden City. I know that Subaru has invested a lot in Camden City. But from an EMS point of view, during that time period, you don't stop. Traffic lights, if it's a red light, you don't stop, because if you stop, something bad's going to happen. You said that you help 20 kids at a time. There's got to be so many more kids than that. How do you, as a Samaritan, how do you not, like, bleed for every one of those kids? Branden, I mean, to be honest, I don't know if there's enough soul in me to bleed for every one of those children that need help. Or where do you find your rejuvenation and your renewal and all of that? Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a good question again. I think I may have shared this with you privately, but I have had the opportunity to travel quite a lot, to different places around the world, and um, I've seen places that I'm grateful I didn't grow up in a lot of the world, right? And so I was in Southeast Asia earlier this year, and I mentioned to you privately that I I witnessed some children starving to death in their capital city. And of all of the experiences I've had in my entire life, start to finish, that was the hardest. I kind of just sat in the dirt and cried. And it's sad. It is genuinely negative. It's sad. It's pessimistic. It is ugly. It's evil. Um, and I spend a lot of time there in that place. And I think that's sad. Again, it's negative, but it is something that needs to be addressed. It's acknowledgeable. That's life. We live that and we witness it. And I have racked my brain, and how to best address the magnitude of evil that there realistically is. And the truth is, I don't have the answers. I think that my best bet has been to build it brick by brick. And that's what I've been trying to do. And I think I've impacted a lot of people and it's helped spread. But on the other hand, and I've made this point too many times, there's forces of evil in this world that are incomprehensible to the average person. And I think that what I mean by that is not to be doomsday-esque, but to say, like, at the end of the day, if there's, let's just say one of the richest people in the world is an evil person. Let's just say one of those people. I don't know if they are or aren't, but I'm just saying hypothetically, if someone in the top 10 richest people are evil and have bad intentions, are you going to work harder than they are in order to oppose them in the amount of work they're doing to an evil end? Because that's what I think is required. I think that somebody has to work as hard equally in the positive direction as the most potent forces of evil are in the world. And that's my philosophy and what I'm trying to accomplish. I think that if there's someone out there who has impacted literally billions of humans in a negative way, then there has to be an offsetting person to impact billions of humans in a positive way, at least in order for the whole society to not collapse. Because eventually, if you just let the evil run rampant, like you said at the beginning, everything just collapses. And I think about it a lot, man. I mean, a lot of these powerful people, whomever they are, and I truly am not even speaking to anyone specifically, but I think that greed in and of itself has become a problem. We're very greedy. Like when I went to Southeast Asia, the problem wasn't that they were a poor nation. They were not a poor nation. They had enough money. Like the kids were starving to death under skyscrapers. It wasn't that there weren't resources. It was that people
Right.
are greedy. And it's a shame, man. There's not the social net that there could be, or that, it had someone taken the forethought to build, then these kids wouldn't be dying in front of my very eyes, and no amount of handing them food is going to save their life because it's unsustainable. So all that to say, the philosophy is, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my very best. When I take my last breath in my most private moment, I will honestly be able to say that I did my best. And that's all I can do. And it hurts to not be able to do more, but I hope that other people do the same.
That's beautiful. Amen. Yeah, I think the quote was Edmund Burr, for evil to thrive, good men do nothing. And that's, I mean, I know that was kind of a loaded question and I apologize for that, but obviously we can't save everyone. But we have to try, right? We have to try. I mean, there's only so many lifeboats, but let's fill them all. Let's fill as many as we possibly can. It's a beautiful statement. Thank you. Man, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate knowing that there is a human like you out there. That's bananas.
Trying our best, man. We're trying our best, that's what we're doing.
Oh boy. Speaking of doing our best, the Pay It Forward campaign is this is the last week. Christmas is in 5 days. Holy moly. So if Christmas is in 5 days and New Year's is 7 days after that. That's, let me do the math. 12 days before the end of the year. We are 12 days away from 2026. And I mean, I literally just started this year. I just started this. 2025 happened yesterday.
Yeah.
We need nominations, boys and girls. I would encourage everyone that can to share the Pay It Forward campaign, share this video, do whatever that you can do. We have a ton of stuff. Again, the community has come forward like nobody's business. We need nominations. The link is on the website. I could probably share it real fast if I knew what I was doing. If I knew that we were a professional kind of show, which we're not, so it's okay. There you go. So here's it's basically, you just click on the link, Pay It Forward campaign, scroll down to the bottom of all this nonsense, and then fill out the form. It's so easy. Fill out the form. It gets sent to our team, and then the team forwards it on to the 8 judges. And then we're not really judges. Judges is a weird word, but basically it goes to the team that divvies out all of the stuff that we have collected. And you guys have been so awesome by donating. Let me hold on. Show me how. Remind me later. Okay, yeah. Remind me later. Get rid of this. If you guys go to this QR code, it goes to the shipping fund. So we're raising money to help shipping because power washers weigh a ton. And so, yeah, almost like Branden, we are trying to help people in our community to not feel the burden of the holiday season. Speaking of which, this time of year between the holidays is a lot harder on people than you realize, especially people that don't have the resources to give gifts and throw parties and make big dinners and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure Branden, as the child of a single mom, I'm sure she struggled to make sure that, all of your holidays were bright and shiny and wonderful. And that has to take such a toll on somebody. 'Tis the season to be nice to people.
Yep. Seconded.
Okay. So, why underprivileged youth specifically?
So for one, I've always said to people growing up people who are growing up, that in order to figure out what you want to do in your life, you may have seen this before, you can just go 3 circles, and wherever they overlap, that's where you're at, like a Venn diagram. And one of them is what you're really good at, right? Something that you're good at, something that you love to do, and something that the world needs. And so I found out at a young age that I'm proficient at public speaking, that I really enjoy public speaking. And then the open-ended question is, what do I think the world needs more than anything in the world? And I think that more than anything in the world, I think that a religion of behaviors is required. And when I say that, I mean that there should be a dogmatic repetition of specific behaviors. And if you do those things, no matter what happens, statistically speaking, your life is likelier to get better than if you didn't do those things. And so that's the answer I can give to simplify it as much as humanly possible. I think that's the best thing I can do, right? That's the best thing I can possibly do. That's me using my mind to kind of put it into simple terms to say, look, because you could say to people, look, you need to be you need to persevere. They don't know what that means. What does that really mean? Right? Like, you need to be a good person. What does that mean? It's subjective, right? So instead, what we need to do, if we can do it, if we can manage, is we need to move every day. Ultimately, you got to get moving. I don't care if that's going for a walk, that might be doing some squats in your house, right? Go for a run. Just get yourself moving. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Using our words, right? Nonviolent communication. I love this principle, right? And I think that being able to express how you feel to somebody in a constructive way is the key to having good, long-lasting relationships. As an example, Aaron, if you said something to me that really hurt me, I might say, Aaron, when you said that, it pissed me off. Right? Like that's something that you hear a lot. People will say something like that. But instead, I'd like to say, Aaron, when you said that, I felt anger. I felt sadness. I felt
Mm.
irritation. And the reason I felt anger is because I have a need to feel as though I'm being respected by you. And in that interaction, I did not feel respected. Can I ask you to speak to me in a kinder tone next time? Like, are you able to do that to help me fulfill that need? Because it is on me ultimately, but that's what I can ask of you. And if that's something you can do, I think that, I'll feel better moving forward.
Dude,
And
that's wild. That is
it's,
what a wonderful perspective.
it is so much better than how we do things currently. And I think just a small example, I'll do this with kids, is I'll say, tell me a time when you felt angry. And they'll say, um, or they'll say, I felt like my friend wasn't listening to me. And I'll say, well, is that a feeling? And adults need this as well. I feel like you don't hear me. Is that a feeling or is that a thought? Right? Because one allows you to take accountability and the other doesn't, right? Like I'm not accountable for how I feel. And it's like in reality, you are feeling the way you're feeling. That's the statement. You think what you think, right? And if I say, Aaron, you just don't like me. I feel like you don't even like me, right? Instead of saying, Aaron, I think based on your facial expressions, based on the tone of your voice, that you are feeling irritated toward me. Is that true? Right? That's a better way for me to frame it because I'm not making any assumptions. I'm not saying what you are or aren't. I'm taking accountability for my thoughts, right? Because people will go, oh, I just feel like you're being negative. You don't, well, that's not fair. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not being negative, right? I think that you had a thought that was incorrect. You had a belief that I can prove to you and tell you, look, not about being wrong or right, but look, I get where you're coming from, but to put your mind at ease, I'm not upset with you, right? That's a better way to communicate.
Brandon, when are you going to become a licensed therapist? That is, I mean, what you just said was inspirational.
I
Oh, wow.
appreciate it. Well,
That's
I can't
wild.
take credit. I can't take credit. That's a process known as nonviolent communication, or NVC. It's created by someone named Dr. Paul Rosenberg. He worked for Ivy League schools. He put this together in the 70s, but he helped mitigate wars in the Middle East using this process. And his book's great. I highly recommend it. He since passed away, but he preaches understanding and compassion first, and I think that verbal communication is the key to our salvation as a species. If you do not learn to speak verbally to one another clearly, then we have no way of communicating what we're really thinking, and I think people misinterpret each other all the time. It's all about intent. What do you really mean? What do you think? What do you want? Tell me.
Yeah, no, dude, I mean that application can go into every single relationship that you experience. I mean, that could go into not just like the kids that you're trying to help or strangers on the street, but I mean, think about like your relationships with your significant other or your spouse or whatever. Like the ability to communicate like that as opposed to that default of accusatory kind of conversation. um I know that I use in some of the relationships in my life where it's just like you're projecting, you're projecting, you're projecting, you're projecting. And maybe I'm the one that's projecting by saying that you're projecting. Because I'm not using those words that you just said. Like I'm experiencing something and I'm hoping that you can explain to me why I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing. Like I feel like you're really upset with me and I'd like to know why. as
So
opposed
notice
to,
what you just said. I love that. That's a great opportunity. So what you just said there is, I feel like you're really upset with me, right? And I'd ask you, what emotion is that, right? Because a feeling is an emotion, right? Now, what you said is a thought, and it's, I think that you're really upset with me right now.
oh,
You feel anxious, maybe. You feel worried, maybe. You feel scared, right? Those things are things you take accountability for. But when I say, I feel like you're mad at me, they can't say in return, no, that's not true, because you can just say, no, but I feel that way. You can't tell me I don't feel that way. You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, I get that. I have a
Yeah.
certain someone in my life that uses that one on me all the time. This is how I feel, and it's justified because that's how I feel.
Got to be precise. You have to be precise about your feelings.
That's bananas. Who knew you were going to tune into Curmudgeon's Corner 71 and get a therapy lesson?
Uh,
Whew, I'm feeling. I need a drink. That's what I'm feeling.
yeah, man.
We
It's
call it apple juice on the Curmudgeon's Corner because back in the day, it was always whiskey. But I'm on this carnivore thing, and whiskey is apparently not allowed
yeah.
because it's made from corn or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Where potatoes is okay.
Yeah, nice, very nice.
Huh. What do adults underestimate about how early self-doubt sets in? Does that make sense? What do adults underestimate about how early life sets in?
Yeah.
When, I mean, I know that traditional therapy will tell you that, I mean, a lot of your upbringing is, that was actually one of the things that I was going to play instead of what we played for the mental floss, was basically your upbringing is what kind of cements in your head um, your expectations of the world around you. You know what I mean? Like, so if I grow up in an environment where everything is negative, I'm going to grow up to be an adult where everything is negative. Um, is there a way to reverse that course? Is there a way to to intervene on that? And like, is there ever a point of no return? Like a 51-year-old man who believes that, the darkness is always going to be a part of his life. Is there a way to intervene where that says, well, you know what? No, that's not true. And, and we adjust and change course.
So what you're talking about is two things, in my opinion. You can tell me if I'm wrong. Just kind of square up what you're saying. So there's a common conversation debate about nature versus nurture, right, in general for kids. And then there's additionally this topic called neural plasticity. And so the question is, how old is too old to change? And I think that for kids, right, it's very easy for us to become traumatized. It's very easy for us to be impacted for the rest of our lives in ways that we don't even realize for so long, right? And I'm not a doctor, right? So I can't say definitively what level of impact certain events have on, infants, right, or young children. But it seems as though it's pretty impactful when something happens at that age. And so again, as an example, I think it could be as simple as saying you're an infant and you have a migraine, you have a really bad headache. If you're 11 months old and you have the worst headache of your 11 months on this earth so far, then that is the most pain you've ever been in. It is the worst moment of your life, literally. And in the worst moment of your life, if you scream and cry for mom and dad and nobody comes to comfort you, that's going to change you for the rest of your life. So that being said, and there's a lot of research to support that that's the case. Some people disagree. Some people say that that's not true. Some developmental doctors would disagree, and I would allow them to, have this debate in the open, given the research and the facts. But my assessment and my experience, I believe that that's true. I do believe that that's likely to be true. I can't imagine how that wouldn't be true. you know, at the end of the day, especially if as an infant, you know, there's any concern on a subconscious level, this illness may not be life sustaining, right? If there's again, in my case, like I very well could have, I had cardiac arrest multiple times. Had I had cardiac arrest, and had someone shoot me with adrenaline and had to come back or come to, but nobody comforted me in those moments. I mean, I literally was on death's door, right? To think that a parent or someone who loves me wouldn't be there to comfort me in that moment would be devastating. And luckily, I did have family that was there for me, you know, that took care of me in those moments, right? But that's how impactful it can be. So, and I was never afraid to die. So maybe that had something to do with it, right? You know, I don't know. That maybe had something to do with the security I felt in the idea of death because no one made me be afraid. In fact, I know a lot of kids whose parents are terrified to die, and the kids are therefore existentially anxious. You know, they're terrified of everything. They have to control every outcome because if it results in death, I can't handle it, you know, whatever it may be. And that's the worst case scenario. But if you solve the worst case scenario, then nothing's that bad. What's the worst case scenario? I break my leg. Well, it's not worse than dying. You know, so if I'm cool with dying, then breaking my leg, no big deal. You know, kind of a
I
tangent.
a couple of episodes ago, I had a guy on the program. His name is Tim Donnelly, and he's a Afghanistan war survivor, but he got blown apart. And he's in a band called The Resilient, and it's fun. My stream of consciousness was when you said, you know, what's worse than death. The captain in his band, I believe he plays the guitar. When each band member was introducing themselves to the concert that I was at, he said, everybody says that they will die for their country, but who says that they'll be maimed for their country? And that impacted me so hard and so heavily, where it was just one of those things where it's just like, yeah, I never even remotely thought about that. Yeah, you know, I joined the army, and you know, I'll die for the country, and da 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 da. But to be, you know, to be blown up, and then for like Tim was what, he was 18, 20 years old at best when he got blown up, lost both of his legs and permanent disability in his right arm. So for the next 60 to 70 to 80 years to have to deal with that dismemberment, I don't know how, you know, I mean, I don't know how these guys do it. And again, that's why, you know, mental health is so important to me. That's why suicide awareness is so important to me, because I mean, you know, you wake up in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you have to go pee. You just get up and you go pee. But what happens when you have no legs at 3 o'clock in the morning? At what point does, you know, having to be taken care of by your spouse, when does your spouse have enough? Is this like, I am so tired of cleaning up after you, become a thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I am so inspired by your story where, you know, you've stared death in the face numerous times, and it sounds to me like it has no power over you whatsoever. And that's beautiful. And that's the kind of person that can bring that kind of light to people that still are afraid of that.
Well,
I don't
if
know.
I can tie that kind of together, honestly, I think this is the message that I don't bring into my professional life as much as I might like to in the future, but because it's not as pragmatic, it's not as useful, it's not as usable or practicable, but that's the principle that we're all headed towards anyway. I mean, at the end of the day, that I'm headed towards, hoping push people towards is that, um, look, man, I'm not afraid to die because at least I have that, if that makes sense. At least I have death to look forward to, right? And meaning that it sounds awful to people. Does that sound sad and awful and terrible? But in reality, I believe, and here's what I share with people. Okay. Everything I'm about to say is not a belief, it is an observable fact of the universe that you can verify on your own. Okay. So first of all things in existence are one thing, no matter what. That's a fact. That is a fact. And I can prove it to you by saying simply, you say, okay, well, Earth is separate from Mars. I say, zoom out. It's all in the same solar system. So it's one solar system, right? And you go, oh, solar system's out of the other, and I zoom out again. It's all the same galaxy, right? Oh, this is galaxies. Zoom out even further. It's all the same universe, right? And you go, well, the universe is in a multiverse. Zoom out even further. It's all one thing, right? And eventually, you have to get to a place where you're looking at all things together, no matter what. You got to get outside of everything. And there's no place to go where you could look at all things, but no matter what, if you zoom out far enough, you're going to find you're looking at one thing, right? Combined. That's a fact. There's no changing that. It is what it is. Whether you accept it or not, it's the truth, right? And it's like, okay, that's nice. So let's go to that. When I die, there's nothing created or destroyed because everything is one thing. Again, this is a fact. It's not woo woo. It's not like spiritual. You don't have to believe this. Wherever you came from that made you Aaron will all return back to wherever you came from in the end, no matter what. And so that could be your soul, if there's a soul. It could be your consciousness and the atoms that make up your body, if that's all it is. Either way, it's all going back to the same place. Doesn't matter. So that's the bottom line that I rely on. That's all true. It's all observable. Nothing's created or destroyed. It's a law of thermodynamics, right? It's observable. You can't break it. And like that gives me solace. So I know when I die, at minimum, even in a philosophical sense. But if you meditate on it, what does that literally look like? What does that literally mean? I don't know. But I know that it's probably pretty nice. It sounds pretty peaceful. To be one with everything sounds pretty nice. It sounds like I don't have to worry about anything. And I'm pretty excited for that experience because, yeah, is it scary? Is it unknown? For sure. But I look at the trees and they don't need much. They don't seem like they're wanting anything. You know what I mean? And there is a saying in a lot of major religions that attachment is the root of all suffering. And if you can free yourself from the attachment, then you can be free of suffering. I mean, and not to get too into it, but I've read the Bible cover to cover multiple times. I've read the Quran. I've read the Bhagavad Gita. I've read, the Siddhartha. I've read the scriptures before. So I think that that's a common theme, man. And I think that all that being true, I don't know. I don't know what's on the other side for sure. I'm definitely clueless, but I know that those things are true. And I know that if as long as those things are true, everything's going to be all right. It's all going to be all right. And that's all that matters, you know?
That's wild. That's wild. That's wild. Heavy. That's like
Go
Men
there.
in Black. That was like that's the end of Men in Black, right? When the galaxy is in the cats.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my Lord, sir, you're
Yeah.
gonna break my brain. Yeah.
That's the point, right? I mean, if we all focus on that end, go into that place, like because it frees you up to do the right thing. What are you afraid of? If you're gonna live a lie, but why? Why do we want to live a lie? And it's at the end of the day, you're gonna take that last breath. You're gonna take that final moment, and you're gonna have to reckon with whatever it was that you did in your life. And you're gonna either be proud of it or you're gonna be terrified to die because you didn't do the right things in life. And in my opinion, I think of that as heaven and hell, right? In that final moment that you get consciously, whatever it is. In that final moment, if you're proud of the life you left behind, then you get to live in heaven. And I'm going to be honest, from my experience with people dying, that is the far rarer outcome than it is for people to be terrified to die, because some part of them lived a lie. They're on their final moments and they're grasping for one more moment so that they can make it right. And in reality, it's going to come when it's going to come. And as long as you do the right thing by the highest standard you can think of, whether that's God for you, whether that's the universe being perfect, whether that's your soul telling you what's right and wrong, whatever it may be, if you don't abide by that, you will find your final moments to be miserable. And I know that's coming. So it's like, all right, let me just live the best, most honest life I can and do my best, man. I want the best chance at having a good death. if that makes sense, as crazy as that sounds.
Brandon, who are you? Like, oh my, like, how do you exist, man? Oh my God. What a beautiful human.
Appreciate it. Thank you. It's nice of you. It's
Holy,
kind of you to have me.
oh my Lord. Mm, wow. It's Curmudgeon's Corner. Who knew? What is the most common lie kids today believe about themselves? I'm gonna pivot out of that. Like I gotta, oh, oh. Next chapter or wow.
That's a really good question.
I had lunch today with Guy and my son, and they mixed it up because Guy comes from 70 plus years of his life experiences, and my son comes from 21 years of life experiences and a public university out in Harrisburg. And they talked about basically the future of society. And my son Jacob is very pessimistic about the future of at least American society. Where basically politicians are in it for themselves. The real puppet masters are big corporation. They're the ones that are calling all the shots. They're the ones that are making policy. They're doing all that. And, at the end of the day, nothing's ever going to change. The ruling class is going to be the ruling class, and the working class is going to continue to get crushed under the boot. Guy's point of view was eventually there'll be an awakening of the people, and the people will rise up against that ruling class. And I sat there between the two of them going, well, you're both right. In my opinion, they're both right to a point. I think that Guy is borderline naive, thinking that the people will be able to rise up against the ruling class. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible to rise up against the ruling class. But I see both points of view. So I don't know why I just went off on such a tangent, but when the question is what's the most common lie these kids believe about themselves, I'm nervous for their future. I'm nervous for um it, just to throw it out there. I think that Rome is burning. I believe that Rome is burning. I think that we're on the other side of the apex of where we're supposed to be and where we could be. I think that my son Jacob is absolutely correct. I think that there's other people calling the shots, and that there's really no chance. I look at politicians like Dan Crenshaw, representative from Texas. He went into Congress full of piss and vinegar, going to change the world, going to set things right. We're going to get term limits. We're going to do all of these things, and we're going to fix all of the problems that are in politics. And within 2 years, he's bent the knee and kissed the ring and is just another shill. You look at all these politicians that enter into Congress with a net value of $10,000, and they're worth now $20 million. And it's because you know why. You know why it is. You get into US politics nowadays to be part of the cog, get yours, I'm going to get rich. Like going into Congress nowadays is winning the lottery, in my opinion. And you're not there for the people. I think Tulsi Gabbard is the only one that has ever gotten into it and got out of it. And the whole reason why she got out of it was because she was like, nope, I'm not going to be a part of this. It's so corrupt that I can't be a part of this, as opposed to bending the knee and kissing the ring. So as far as the most common lie these kids believe about themselves, it's really, really hard in the United States to believe, I'm a small business owner. It's very hard to be a small business owner. It's crushing to be a small business owner right now. This used to be the land of opportunity. This was the place where, all the immigrants did come because they had a chance to make a really good life for themselves and their family. And I'm not convinced that that's the case anymore, is all I'm saying. And so it's really, I love what you're doing for these. I have 6 nieces and nephews, and I love the fact that I can be an inspiration to them. I love the fact that I can be an encouragement to them.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can be honest with them though. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, work hard, try hard, you know, get great grades in school and you'll have a fantastic life.
Yeah. Well, that's why right now it's more important to teach principles than it is to teach information. We don't know what's coming. We don't know what's coming down the pipeline in 10 years. I will say at the end of the day, my prognosis, what I believe is the future. Um, I mean, if you're really young, then it's got to become clear to you that this is unsustainable as a society. If you're older and you're a student of history, you know what's coming and you understand that there will be a complete and utter collapse. But in reality, that's not the end of the story, right? So if you're an older American right now, if you're 55 and older, you might die in the midst of chaos. I think, in my opinion, I
Yeah,
think you're going to die in an uncertain world. If you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s, I think you might live to see the other side of whatever's coming. And whatever that is going to be steered by people who have some resolve, and the people who have no resolve will get run over. And it's a shame, and it's sad, and it's unacceptable. But that's just the world that we let ourselves create. I mean, it is what it is. Like I have no real words of praise for the leadership of this country for my entire life. I have no praise for anybody who's been in
sure.
charge for the last 50 years, frankly. I mean, you all had a chance, and I don't care what they did well or didn't do well. We are still here. And I can speak just from an education perspective and tell you that in my lifetime, the graduation requirements have been lowered in New Jersey, and that the rate of reading proficiency and mathematical proficiency, at least in the state of New Jersey and in most states, has gone down consistently for the last 25 years, regardless of who was president or governor.
Oh,
So it
I
doesn't matter.
100% agree with you. When George W. Bush put in the No Kid Left Behind, that was a death nail.
Hmm.
When you drop the standards to 0, like what do you, what do you expect is going to happen?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it's inflation with education as well. You think about it, if there's no standard to graduate high school, then a high school diploma stops meaning as much.
yeah, yeah. I mean, back in the day when my parents, which would probably be your grandparents, um, you know, I was the first kid to go to college in my family. That was huge. Right? And now, like, just like, just like back in the day when you could buy a cheeseburger for 75 cents and now it's over $2 to buy a cheeseburger. Now a college degree doesn't equal anything. You have to have a master's or a doctorate in order to be considered educated.
Right.
So yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm
But
with
here's
you
the
on that.
bright side. I mean, here's the bright side, though. I mean, here's the reality, I think, in my opinion. And I think I don't hear many people coming up with solutions. And this is the thing where I think I got to energize the youth for. And saying, like, you asked me what the biggest lie kids tell themselves are. And this is perfect segue because the answer, in my opinion, is that, and I hear this a lot, is that I'm not so and so. I'm not LeBron James. I'm not Michael Jordan. I'm not any of these people. I'm not, I can't be, I'm not Martin Luther King, right? I can't be that person. And in reality, that's the biggest lie because we're going to need those people. We're going to need the Martin Luther King Juniors of the world. We're going to need those people very soon. And if you don't believe that you can be that person, then you can't be. But
Right.
we can't let everybody not be that person because we're going to need somebody to step up. And the name of the game in the next 2 decades is leadership. Who's going to be a leader and who is going to sit back and let these controlling interests destroy centuries of progress.
Sure.
They're just throwing the biggest party of all time, pissing away resources. And I hate to be a little belligerent about it, but I think that's the reality that we all agree on. This ruling class, they're pissing away resources. They're using up, like, the money is just becoming more concentrated. And I give this statistic a lot. I mean, people can verify this live. As you know, I think we chatted about this, and this is not a character judgment. I'm not saying anything that I'm not saying. Let's be clear. But what I am saying is that the richest human being in the world has control over 50% of the wealth in the United States. One person. Top three people control what I believe is 90% of the wealth. 70 to 90%, something like that. I had to verify.
Okay.
But it's a high percentage. So it's just becoming more and more concentrated at the top. And I remember when the statistic came out, and this was shocking. This was like 10 years ago, and they said, oh, the top 1% controls 50% of the wealth in America, and everybody went crazy. And now it's one person. It was the top 1%. You're talking about, thousands and thousands of people, if not millions, a couple million people. Now it's one person. So it's just more and more concentrated. It's unsustainable.
So I guess like to bring this whole conversation full circle, to bring this whole show full circle, the importance of what you're doing, the importance of impacting these young people's lives, and why it's important for you to start at such an early age, is that, like you had mentioned earlier, about maybe people like myself are going to die in the midst of chaos, but they'll be, like the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, maybe, earlier than that, the teens and stuff like that. They're going to be able to see everything on the other side of this chaos. What you're doing, instilling the youth with a sense of purpose and a sense of nobility, is ultimately what we need to do to prepare them for the other side. Like, one, the 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 fortitude to survive the chaos, and then two, the moral compass to do what is needed to be done on the other side of the chaos, so that history doesn't repeat itself. Is that fair?
100%. Yeah. And we're fighting somewhat of a ground war of ideologies. And I think the really, it's funny because people always thought the two sides were the left and the right. In the reality, the two sides are and will be in the future the political and the non-political.
Yeah.
Right? Old system, new system. Right? Are we going to continue with the nonsense, or are we going to start something new and fresh? And I
Yeah,
think
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I've always said that it's WWF. Red, blue, who cares? They both play for the same team. Like,
right.
again, it's just, and the identity politics, and the the ability to fight with one another and argue with one another keeps all of us distracted from what is really happening and who the real villains are. Because my team is, I'm I love the Steelers and you love the Browns, and therefore we're going to be mortal enemies for the rest of eternity, as opposed to having, like you said in the beginning of the episode, real factual dialogue and conversation, and the ability to bounce ideas and thoughts and conversation off of each other without resorting to violence, without resorting to arguments, without screaming. We've so gotten away from the ability as a society to talk.
Yep. Yeah. Well, again, it's like the left and the right hate each other. Democrats and Republicans, they hate each other, right? Okay. I guarantee you I can get them to agree on a couple things. Here's one of the things they'll agree on. Let's keep money in politics, right? We'll keep money in politics. See how quickly they agree on that one. Right. And I always say, man, I gotta say it with some attitude, man. We take the money out of politics. We've been saying it for years.
Yeah.
What are they going to do about it? That's the question. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to unleash the military on the people who decide that they don't want you to be paid an egregious salary? Right. Then we'll see. Then we'll see what the world looks like, and we'll see the people in the military and where they fall and what they want to do. I mean, like, but give these people a chance, right? Like, put them on the stand. Say, hey, look, listen. I've always been in favor of what I'm about to say. I think this is infallible, and I would argue this with anyone. But I've never met an American who disagreed with me. We'll take the salary away entirely. If you work for the Senate, or if you're a Congress, if you're an elected official, no salary at all. You and all of your family members immediately are taken care of, right? Your home is paid for, right? You all have retirement, right? We'll still pay your retirement fund, even if you serve one term. Your kids' school education paid for, right? You can live in a gated community with all the other elected officials. You're going to live in a McMansion, but a nice home that's safe and taken care of, right? All that to be said, if you accept a gift of any kind from any special interest, not only will you lose your position, but you will go to prison for a minimum term. It's that simple. There is absolutely no game being played here. No service, no favor, no financial present, no gift, no fundraising. It will be standardized, right? Take all of that away and see who volunteers for the job. Those people who volunteer for the job are the people you want for the job, right? And at the end of the day, you will not become a millionaire because of this. If you want to write books when you're done, go write books, go do speaking. That's fine by me. Become rich in that way. I'm not against you getting money for your expertise, but you're not going to take advantage of the people. This is insane. It's obviously at a level where everyone knows about it. We've all said that we would love to take money out of politics, but it's never going to happen. And I say, okay, well, then just wait for the collapse and then we'll try it then. I mean, it's either you try it beforehand or try it after, but one way or another, it's, what do you want to do? I mean,
you're not wrong. Keep your logic out of this conversation. Yeah, you're not wrong. And it's mind numbing to me, especially because back in the founding father days, when Congress retired, it was because we had to go back to the farms and we still had to produce and we had to do all of those things that, you know what I mean? Like, you volunteered to be a part of the government. And now I get into government, it's a lottery ticket. And I'm going to be a multimillionaire in 2 years. It's bananas.
For you to become an elected official to represent a part of your community, you should have to have a real serious conversation with yourself, as if you're joining the military, as to whether or not you're prepared for that sacrifice. Because it is a sacrifice and it should be a sacrifice, right? You have to give. When in reality, you get that job and you go home and say, honey, we're good. We never have to worry about money again. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
Oh man, this is insane. I'm famous now. Like it's this reality TV show and it's all nonsense. And again, it is unsustainable. So it doesn't matter. You have to understand, if we keep playing this game, that it all comes to zero sum for all of us. And then we just start over and we'll see what happens, in reality. I hate to put it that way, but that's just what it is.
Yo, you're good. All right.
Appreciate it.
Let's shift things back to you. I'm
Sure.
so sorry that we went down that rabbit hole, but that's what Curmudgeon's Corner is. We're
Hey.
go where the wind blows. iRise University in practice. What does iRise actually give to kids that schools often don't or can't?
Hmm. So I mentioned when I was in high school, I kind of developed some poor habits. And so one great example is kind of what stimulated iRise from the beginning was the way in which the education system deals with bad behavior. And instead of correcting it with positive behavior, a lot of the times it's more so obedience based and just getting someone to fall in line, regardless of whether it's effective or not for learning. And so the great example is that I would miss quite a bit of school. I would be late a lot to school. I just was going through a lot psychologically. Again, this is during the time when I'm getting ready for my SATs. My sister's attempted suicide. No one in school knows about this, right? Like, I'm just missing classes. And instead of somebody coming to me and going, "Hey, what's going on at home?" In order for me to be rectified for missing classes, I was suspended from school, which is ironic, of course, right? Because I'm missing classes, and the solution is to pull me out of the education environment. And I just thought that was, just the opposite of what we should be doing. And I left a 10-page dissertation on the table when I graduated for my administration to review, just because I put it in the English and said, this is a culture of obedience. It's not a culture of education. It's about learning at the end of the day. And so, as an example, if I have a student who is getting 99, 100% on all of the exams when I find out what they know, then why would I require them to do homework? And why would I make that a part of their grade? They're learning the material. They know the information, right? Give them more information until they need homework, right? Like until
Right.
they need to bring it home, because a lot of these kids don't have a place at home to do the homework, but they're gifted. So why hurt them, in terms of their grade point average? I don't think that makes any sense. And so really what I want to do and what we've been doing is saying, look, okay, let's take these kids. Some of them are brilliant. And I've experienced quite a few times where we say, all right, let's give them some things they can do. And the schools don't teach these things. They don't teach them to utilize exercise to deal with negative emotion, right? You learn to play basketball in gym class, but they don't say, hey, listen, in your darkest times, it might be best for you to break a sweat, right? And there's a large body of evidence to support this now. Getting the endorphins from working out, getting, norepinephrine released in the brain that releases acetylcholine, which is a focus hormone. It helps us learn. And we've demonstrated this with our own studies, and it's profound. And so some of these kids have a really tough time focusing in class. Get their heart rate up until they're panting, until they're sweating, and then sit them down and go read this passage. And I guarantee you they do better. It just is what it is. And that's one example, but the same is true for meditation. The same is true for verbal communication, and the same is true for goal setting. All those things matter, and they're not in the curriculum. And I think that they have an impact on academic performance, and I think that they have an impact on personal experience. And it's profound, once again, dealing with trauma. You might not be the best student, but you might not have to be. If you're Bill Gates or you're Steve Jobs or you're, I mean, if you're even, you might be Aaron, you might be Branden, right? Like it might not fit you. And it just might be best for you to have those behaviors to find your own way.
It's fascinating that you bring that up. Guy just shared with me this afternoon a podcast on Spotify. It's the podcast is People I Mostly Admire. And the episode that he shared with me was Michael Crow's leadership. Michael Crow is the president of University of Arizona. And he has won some award. I forget what it is, but 11 years in a row. And the reason why he's won this award is because the University of Arizona has completely redefined the educational process, where universities are typically known for who they exclude, where University of Arizona is known for who
Mm.
they include, meaning, like I think the statistic was in Stafford University or whatever. One year they were known as the greatest university of all time because they had zero admissions because they just, they were just too elite to have admissions. And and all the Ivy League schools where like it's so exclusive to be there, and you have to have certain financial stratosphere and certain educational stratosphere and so on and so forth. And he's like, what we did at University of Arizona was, it was just like, okay, you want to be a chemist, or no, the example that he's like, you want to be an engineer but you're terrible at math. Okay, so let's, like, we're going to attack that. We're going to figure out, we're going to break through to you how to do the math, and therefore, that love of engineering and all of that other stuff now becomes, second nature. And that's what they've been doing at the University of Arizona. And like, I'm listening to this podcast, and it was just like, I want to go back to the University of Arizona and get, and go for whatever it is that your dream is.
Yeah.
They have the tools and the ability to facilitate that and help you on that educational journey. And he's, and you really have to watch or listen to the podcast. Again, it's called, it is People I Mostly Admire. I'll forward it to you when we get off the show.
Thank you.
It's mind-boggling how opposite it is to, he's basically, he was just like, the podcast starts out, it was really cool. The podcast starts out where it's just like, when we became a nation, a republic, when we became a republic, we kicked out all of the European style of things. We kicked out, the king, we kicked out, all of that stuff. He's like, but we kept a colonial system of education. It's, like, if you look at Europe and you look at England, they're all the exact same. The model is exactly the same. This elite structure of who's allowed to go into a university and who's not. And we have to change that. He's like, it's not scalable. We need to have a scalable higher education. And until you get a scalable higher education, you're going to marginalize the majority of the people that live in this nation. And you're going to get weeded out, and you don't have the grades to do this, you're gone. If you don't have the grades to do that, you're gone. If you don't have the financial, you're gone. If you don't have it was wild. So listening to this guy, I think you and Michael Crow need to get together and hang out. You guys will change the universe.
I would love to. That'd be great.
That's fantastic. Like I said, I'll send it to you as soon as, I'll send it to you right now. Screw it. I'm right here. I'm right here. I'll screw it. Do it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's one of those things, right? I mean, you think about it and you want everything to be accessible, and you want these kids to have the ability to get the job done, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. I've never been one who has talked about wanting things to be easy. I don't think easy is the right way to look at things. I think we want everyone to just be able, right? Like, to get to where they want to go.
Right.
And whether that's hell or high water, at least there's a path for you to get where you're trying to go. And I mean, there's so many ways to look at this, right? Like,
sure,
higher education. I mean, it's financially in and of itself a barrier, right? I mean, do you have $60,000 to go to a respectable university? I mean, nobody really does. So they all get loans. And then they can't pay them back, because the jobs don't offer enough money at the moment. The economy is in and of itself like where it is. So all these things, when kids ask, what path.
And with the introduction of AI, that is a job killer. Apparently, like, anybody that got into English, you're done for.
Done. It's over with. It's over with, right? A lot of different fields are over with now. And so the question is, what's the best path for me to take? It used to be going to college. It used to be starting a business. It used to be getting into a trade, right? And now all those things are changing. The whole landscape is changing. And the reality is, the only answer I can give to you is to figure out what you love, because that's the only thing you're not going to quit on. because
Yeah.
otherwise it's going to be too hard. No matter what you choose to do, it's going to be too hard in this world. It's too competitive. So you got to find your passion and do what you love anyway, because you're either going to suffer doing something you hate and not making enough money, or you're going to suffer doing something you love and you just might make enough money if you do it well. You know what I mean? And like,
That's fair.
that's the best advice I can give to kids. It's harsh, but it's true.
I mean, it's great advice. I mean, that especially with today's youth, that's
Yeah.
the best advice that you can possibly give.
Yep.
So what happens when kids grow up without support?
So, yeah, well, again, great question. And I think that first of all, I should make it clear that, and this has become clear to me rather in my career, but also supported by statistics, is that there's a lot of kids who are going to be fine no matter what. It doesn't matter what era they grew up in. It doesn't matter what experiences they had at home. It doesn't matter how abusive a parent might have been. It doesn't matter what they grew up in economically. None of that matters. They were going to be successful one way or another. And those kids are 1 in a million, but those kids exist and oftentimes have, for lack of a better way of putting it, psychopathic levels of focus. They're just going to be successful no matter what. And the reason I bring them up is because for the kids who are not those people, right, who aren't going to be okay one way or another, who are on the knife's edge, if they get support, they'll be successful. If they don't get support, maybe they'll fail. And the reality is, for those kids who are on the knife's edge, to compete with the psychopathic tendencies of some of these kids who are going to be successful no matter what, you're going to need a lot of good behaviors. You're going to need a lot of support, because these kids are going to crush you if not. And then they turn into adults, right? They turn into the Fortune 500 lists. Like, they turn into these people who are ruthless. And then on the other side, there are kids who never get any support. And the truth is, they were going to need a lot of support to begin with. Even an average amount of support wasn't going to help some of these kids. They were going to need a lot more than that. And they're going to fall through the cracks. What happens to those kids statistically? It's pretty clear. They are far more likely, the more ACEs you have, known as adverse childhood events, the more ACEs you have statistically, the more likely you are to be addicted to drugs, the more likely you are to end up in prison, the more likely you are to be a convicted felon, end up in a gang, die young, have unplanned pregnancies, right? All those outcomes are more likely the more adverse childhood events you have, the more abuse you've experienced, right? The more poverty you've been in, right? The more bullying you've been through. All that makes it statistically more likely that you will burn out. And we see it play out all the time.
Okay. How does early intervention change adult outcomes?
It's a great question too. So we have a lot of statistics on the website, which I love to share. But for students who interact with positive habit forming behaviors on a daily basis, they are 2 to 3 times more likely to succeed academically than students who don't. So if you go up, you scroll up, and you go to about, and then scroll down a little bit here. Yeah, but keep going. We should have a couple charts there. Yeah, so these are basic charts, but they represent pretty straightforward statistics. And the reason why we don't have too many statistics and charts on the website is because this stuff is common sense. In my opinion, that's my opinion. We do have 100 Ivy League studies on the website for people to review. But like, as an example, saying to somebody, if your child exercises, they'll do better in school. I would hope we would, yeah, that makes sense, as opposed to not exercising, right? But
Sure.
so that's what these are demonstrating, right? So 2 to 3 times more likely to perform well, 2 to 3 times more likely to show up, like literally just to come to school. They're more likely if they do these habits. So it's across the board pretty crystal clear that we want these kids to, and it's not just the 4 that I've named. There are others, right? But for the most part, those ones are the ones that are most teachable, scalable, provable. And that's really important for schools. They want to make sure that what they're doing and investing in is provable. And that you can see it on paper. And so those 4 behaviors have been studied heavily by Ivy League schools. So big fan of that.
All right. Well, speaking of exercise, what
Yeah.
is this that what is this that I hear about? You were trying to break a world record?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is
So
what is that?
So you're familiar with a pull-up?
Yes, I can't do them. I haven't been able to
That's
do them
okay.
since like high school.
No, it's okay. It's tough movement. There's another movement called a muscle up. And so in order to be able to do a one muscle up, they generally say you should be able to do 10 really good pull-ups. And so once you can do 10 really good pull-ups straight, you should be strong enough to attempt a muscle up, which is where you go up to the bar, do a pull-up, and then you press on top of the bar and complete the rep over the bar. So it's a full
Jiminy,
body
like
movement.
full extension over the bar?
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
bananas. No, F that.
Yeah.
I'm done.
So yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah. So that's the movement. And one day I was looking for a fundraiser that we could do for iRise, and I was looking at world records, and I've always been in decent shape. I like to work out, and I saw the record for pull-ups was something like 9,000 reps. It was something insane, and I was like, okay, so that's a little bit much. Not that I couldn't do it, that if I set my mind to it, but I didn't know if I was that committed, if I could make it happen. So then I saw the muscle up world record was 1,300 reps in a day, which ended up being one rep every minute on the minute for an entire 24 hours.
Good.
And so I said, all right, let me go to the park. So I went to the park and I tried that pace. I doubled that pace for 2 hours and I did it. And I said, okay, I think I can do this. And I said, I think I can break this record in about 12 hours. And destroyed my hands. My hands were destroyed. But then I trained for 3 months, got best shape of my life, and I ended up doing about 900 muscle ups before I broke my hand.
You
And
broke
had
your
a
hand?
broke my hand. We had a doctor on site. I had a stress fracture in my hand, and that was it. That was that. That's all I had in me. I just couldn't get over the bar anymore with my hand being the way it was. But we raised a ton of money for charity, and I became the world leader in muscle ups in 24 hours for someone with a pacemaker. So that's my world record.
That's bananas. You
I
broke your
appreciate it.
hand. Dude, I got to be honest with you. I saw the video.
Yeah.
I had no idea you were that ripped. Like, I was like,
Oh, that's nice, man.
damn, look at that guy. Look at that guy.
I
Oh.
appreciate it. It's nice of you to say. Yeah, I'm doing my best, man. It's all we can do, right? That's it. Like, trying to stay in shape.
Branden, you are something extraordinary. I am so honored to have you on the corner. 25 year 25 years old and just impacting the world around you. I mean, at the end of the day, that legacy, if you have the ability to impact one kid's life, incredible. But you're impacting all of these kids' lives. Yeah, man, you're on the side of the angels. I'm honored. I'm honored to call you a friend. I really am.
Well, thank you, Aaron. I can't tell you how much I appreciate everything you've done just in the short time we've known each other to support me and make sure that the initiative that you and I are both on, because I think we share the same goals, and I think we're both in the same school of thought. And at the end of the day, last thing I can say for me, from my side, is that the best thing we can do is spread this information. We can spread this awareness, and man, I hate to talk about it in this way, but the truth is the way the world works is not how we choose it to work. It's just how it is, and I think we're finding our way through a world that we would all like to be different, but one way or another, those kids got to get fed. One way or another, those kids have to get the resources, and they have to get the tools to be successful in a changing world. And the only way we can get that to them is by getting people to be aware of it, by helping to fund this project, by helping us pay for the things that we need to pay for to get them what they need.
Yeah.
And that all comes from awareness, and people caring, in the way that we care. So, I mean, and this year, hopefully in 2026, I'm hoping to complete a book, and get that out there and help spread awareness. So, hopefully we have more to talk about, as the year goes on. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd love to have you back on the show. We talk about whatever you want to talk about. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. That's how it works here. And just again, I apologize for moonlighting on your spotlight, but this is the last week before the end of the Pay It Forward campaign for 2025. We really need nominations. We need you guys, people that are in need, people that are just starting out, people that could just use a shot in the arm. It's important that you guys go to our website and nominate people. Again, one more time, here's the webpage. You just go to Phoenix E.O.D. There's the Pay It Forward campaign. Scroll down to the bottom and nominate somebody. We have a lot of stuff, and we've raised enough money to ship a lot of this stuff. We can do a lot of good for 2025. And again, going back to Branden's website, excuse me. Where am I? Remove that and add this. Whoops, that's invite. There we go. Share screen. iRiseU. It's super easy. iRiseUniversity.org is where you need to be, and you can donate here, and you can watch all of the stuff that they're doing. They're impacting the kids, and when you impact the kids, you are impacting the future. And that's what it's all about. We have the ability as a community, we have the ability as individuals to impact the world around us. And, one of my favorite little sayings is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, one person at a time, one life at a time. And that's what this is all about. No man is an island unto himself, and we need to take care of each other. All right, Branden, getting ready to wrap this up. One habit every kid should learn.
Oh man. I think one habit that will carry all the others is fitness. Go break a sweat every single day. Get in the habit of doing that and get in the habit of enjoying it. Don't do it as a chore. Go have fun. Go have some fun and play, get your heart rate up and find the joy in that. And I think if you get older and you find a place for physical fitness in your life, that it changes you psychologically. And there's so much evidence to support that. But you don't want it to be a chore. Find a love for something. If you like to dance, dance every day, but do it hard. Dance, break a sweat. You know what I mean? If you like to play golf, but you better hit some balls. You know what I mean? You got to get into it. Whatever it may be. If you enjoy skateboarding, go skateboard, but do it hard, and get into it. Take the time out of your life because you remember, if we didn't have this real heavily civilized society, you'd be outside. You'd be carrying stuff that's heavy. You know what I mean? You'd be moving.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have time to be anxious. You'd be breaking a sweat. Your body would be working through that anxiety, through that cortisol, right? That stress hormone. You'd be able to work it out, literally and figuratively. And you'd be releasing adrenaline, and you'd be releasing dopamine and serotonin, happiness and love hormones in your brain just by getting your heart rate up. So I think if you do those things, it encourages you to be healthy in other ways as well. You don't want to be down on yourself if you're feeling happy after a good workout, if you feel accomplished. You don't want to go and eat, bad food if you feel really good after a workout. You want to continue to feel good, right? You want to get good sleep. It's good for your brain, like that's so important. So that's definitely the number one thing I would recommend to kids. I would have a different answer for adults, I think.
Okay, well, that's the second question. One thing adults forget about being young.
Man, they forget what it's like to be present. They forget what it's like to just be in the moment, man.
Oh,
My
that's
God,
awesome.
like when you're a kid, life is just coming. You're just there. It's just happening. Like before your eyes, you're just there and you're in it. But as an adult, I mean, how often do you really even spend a moment? You're thinking about something else all the time. It's
Yeah,
insane, so being present for sure.
yeah, dude, you're spot on. Like, wow, that's so true. You're always thinking about mortgages and bills and and family life and responsibilities and relationships and all of that other stuff. Whereas in like, I remember as a kid, it was just like, all right, I'm gonna jump on my BMX bike and I'll see you when the streetlights come on. Bye.
Yeah.
Gone. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And you're going over to Kyle's house and you're playing video games and all of that stuff. And it was like you never, um, Yeah, for sure. That's an awesome. So then, what one singular moment that reminds you of why you do what you do?
Uh, it's hard to say. I'm fueled by a lot of hard experiences. Definitely, I'm definitely fueled by some sad encounters. But I think I mentioned about my grandmother briefly, which is someone I would usually spend more time talking about, but this woman was like another mother to me. I mentioned my mom worked overnight, so I didn't see my mom very often as a child, realistically. My
Hmm.
grandmother heavily was influencing my development, and she was a huge, huge factor for me in becoming a compassionate individual. And so when I did my first speaking engagement, I told the story at the beginning, but they called me down to the gym to speak, and there were news cameras there, and again, there were hundreds of kids there, and I was super nervous. And my grandmother was the first person to get to me, and she said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "No, I'm too nervous. I don't want to do it." And she kissed me on the forehead, and she laughed, and she said, um, "You should just be yourself and tell your story. And if you're honest, then people will understand." And my grandmother passed away before she could see this all come to fruition. I miss her every single day, and I try to make her proud. But that memory sticks in my mind. That was the best advice anyone's ever given me, is to be honest. And it gives
Hmm.
me goosebumps because I would rather die than live a lie.
Hmm.
And I think that that's important for people, not to be dramatic, but in reality, man, there's another premise in all major religions that you would rather play your part poorly than play someone else's part well. And whatever that part is for you in life, I mean, you just to be yourself. You have to be true to who you really are. If not, whatever you're doing is a waste of time. That's the truth. If it's not you doing it, you're living somebody else's life. And that has informed every single thing that I've done for the rest of my life, for sure.
That's awesome. That's wild. Yeah, my grandfather was my best friend. He was the best man in my first wedding. He passed in 2003, and I still use him as uh, my North Star. He's my compass. Um, I always say the dumbest things on this show. Oh, geez. Uh, I got um, I got I got caught shoplifting when I was like 17 years old, and my dad, as I mentioned before, is a colonel in the Marine Corps. Um, I got caught shoplifting, and the security guard said, he's going to call my father and all that stuff. And I told him, I said, my dad is a colonel in the Marine Corps. If you call him, he will kill me. He'll literally will kill me. I mean, I was sobbing. I was a mess. I was like, you cannot you can call anybody else on the planet. Do not call my father. I will be murdered. And he said, well, do you got somebody else that we can call? And I was like, "Yeah, call my grandfather." So he called my grandpa, and my grandfather came and he picked me up, and we're walking out to his truck, and he said, "Are you ever going to do this again?" And I said, "No, Grandpa." And he goes, "Then we're never going to talk about this again." And that was it. And he never brought it up. And he never mentioned it to a soul. I just announced it to 4 people here in the chats. Um, But yeah, that was again, yeah, as far as what you just said, as far as your grandmother is concerned, I feel the same exact way about my grandfather. Um, he sits right here, and I conduct myself in a way that I know that would make him proud. So I salute you and I salute your grandmother.
Cheers.
What do you say we wind this down and talk backstage?
Dude, I appreciate it, Aaron. Thank you so much for everything, man. It's been a pleasure.
No, the pleasure, the honor has been all me. So, um, all right, let's see here. Da, 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 da. If you do feel so inspired, there's the QR code. You can scan on that. That's the GoFundMe page. It is Help Us Ship Hope. We're pretty good on that. So, and we don't have a whole lot of nominations. So I think more than half of the stuff is just going to roll into 2026. So we're pretty good on that. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can always contact the corner at phoenixeod.com. The really important stuff here is suicide prevention and crisis counseling resources. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, seek help from a professional and call 988. The United States' first nationwide 3-digit mental health crisis hotline, 988, will connect callers with trained mental health counselors. You can also text HOME to 741-741 in the US and Canada to reach the crisis text line. Or you can always visit www.apa.org/topics/crisis-hotlines to connect you with resources to anything that you are facing. That could be mental, emotional, physical, substance, gambling, whatever it is that you're facing, you are not alone. Please reach out to somebody. Please reach out to somebody. You can reach out to me and I can help you connect with one of these. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a trained professional. I'm not a therapist. I'm not any of that stuff. But here on the corner, we believe in I see you, I hear you, and I love you here on the corner. And that's, if you are caring more than people see, you are not alone. If we can help someone earlier, we should. And on the corner, I see you, I hear you, and I love you. Thanks everybody for coming out on a Saturday night. I know it's a Saturday night right before Christmas, so I'm sure you're at parties. I'm sure you're doing all kinds of Christmassy stuff or holiday stuff or whatever it is that people do during this time of year. Again, Pay It Forward is coming to an end. I don't know when we're going to do the award ceremony. Chances are I will be live at some point this next week to fill the gap, just to say hello. But like I said, I think Ryan has a conflict of interest. So as soon as I talk to Ryan and figure out exactly what his schedule is, 2026 is going to be wild, especially in the corner. There's an astronaut that I want to get on here, my cousin, and there's a guy that works in Camden that is changing Camden kids' lives, just like Branden here. Branden, thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for the iRise program and the university. I can't tell you how inspirational and admirable you are for putting yourself out there and making yourself available to these kids that need us, that need you. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you again. It's been an honor as well. Thank you very much.
You got it, brother. All right. So to everybody out there in the cyber world, thank you so much for coming out to Curmudgeon's Corner. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a great night and a great week.